The house had a way of settling at night, wood stretching, pipe sighing, the kind of sounds you learn to ignore when you live alone long enough. That night, though, something felt off. Not loud, not sudden, just wrong in a quiet way that made my skin tighten. I was standing in the kitchen when I heard it. A soft knock. Not at the front door. Not the back. From inside the house. I froze, fingers still wrapped around a cold glass of water. The knock came again, slow, deliberate. 3 taps, each one spaced just enough to feel intentional. It was coming from the hallway, from the direction of my bedroom. I whispered without meaning to, "Hello?" The words sounded foreign in my own home. No answer, just silence so thick it pressed against my ears. I told myself it was the walls. Old houses make noises. That's what everyone says. I took a step forward, then another, each one heavier than the last, my heartbeat thudding loud enough to drown out reason. As I reached the hallway, the motion light outside flicked on, flooding the living room with pale white glow through the curtains. Something moved past the window. Too tall, too slow. My phone buzzed in my hand, making me flinch hard enough to spill water across the floor. A text message. Unknown number. "Why are you walking around?" I stared at the screen, breath shallow, every door in the house still locked. I was home alone. At least, I thought I was. And then I heard breathing behind me. I didn't turn around. That's the first thing people say you should do. Face the fear, confirm it, take control. But control is a lie we tell ourselves when something doesn't fit into the shape of reality anymore. In that moment, with the phone still glowing in my hand and the sound of breathing close enough to feel warm, I understood something deep and primitive. If I turned around, whatever was behind me would become real. So I stood there, staring at the far wall of the hallway. The peeling paint. The crooked family photo I'd never bothered to straighten. The closed bedroom door at the end, its shadow leaking out beneath it like a stain. The breathing stopped. Silence rushed in to replace it, loud and suffocating. My heart hammered harder, angry at me for listening. I waited for footsteps, for laughter, for some explanation that would pull the moment back into something manageable. Nothing came. After a long stretch of nothingness, I forced myself to breathe again. Slow, careful. I told myself the sound had been my own breath echoing in my ears. Panic does strange things. Isolation does worse. I checked my phone again. No new messages. No missed calls. No signal. That should have scared me more than it did. But fear doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in layers, like mold growing where you don't look often enough. I wiped the spilled water from the floor with my sock and laughed under my breath. The laugh sounded thin, weak, like it didn't belong to me. "Get it together," I muttered. My voice felt too loud, as if the house itself was listening. I moved through the hallway slowly, flipping on lights as I went. Bathroom, empty. Guest room, untouched. Closet, just coats and the faint smell of dust. Every space offered reassurance, but it felt staged, like the house was showing me what it wanted me to see. When I reached my bedroom door, I paused. The door was closed. I never close it. I stared at the knob, half expecting it to turn on its own. The air around it felt heavier, colder somehow. I placed my hand on the metal, flinching at the chill, and pushed the door open. The room was exactly how I'd left it. Bed unmade. Laptop on the desk. Curtains drawn. No signs of movement. No intruder hiding in the shadows. The relief came fast, and with it, embarrassment. I was alone. I'd always been alone. That was the problem. Living by yourself does something subtle to your mind. It sharpens your awareness at first, every sound, every shadow, but over time, it dulls your sense of certainty. You start to question what's normal. You stop trusting your instincts because there's no one else there to confirm them. I moved to the window and peeked through the curtain. The street outside was empty. The motion light had turned off again, leaving the yard swallowed by darkness. No footsteps in the snow. No car idling. No sign that anyone or anything had been there at all. I exhaled and leaned my forehead against the glass. That's when I noticed the reflection. Not outside. Behind me. Just for a second, the glass showed a shape that didn't match the room. Something darker than the shadows, standing too close. I spun around, heart jumping into my throat. Nothing. The room was empty. Completely, undeniably empty. I backed away, bumping into the bed, and sat down hard. My hands were shaking now. Not violently. Just enough to make it impossible to ignore. That's when the house made another sound. This time, I knew it wasn't settling. It was a whisper. Low. Close. Right outside the bedroom door. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Familiar, almost gentle, like someone trying not to wake a sleeping child. I held my breath, every muscle locked, listening as the whisper drifted closer to the door. Then a single sentence slipped through the crack beneath it. I don't like when you ignore me. The light flickered. Once. Twice. And in that moment, sitting alone on my bed in a locked house that suddenly felt far too small, I realized the truth I'd been avoiding since the knock in the hallway. Whatever was here didn't break in. It had been waiting. And it knew me well enough to be patient. Home alone horror stories that will haunt you forever. After the whisper, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed with the lamp on, every light in the house burning like a challenge. The sentence kept replaying in my head, not the words themselves but the way they were said, soft, disappointed, almost intimate. I don't like when you ignore me. It wasn't angry. That terrified me more. Morning arrived eventually, thin gray light slipping through the curtains like it didn't want to be seen. The house looked harmless again. Smaller. Ordinary. The kind of place people would describe as quiet. I walked through it slowly, checking every door, every window, every lock. Nothing was disturbed. No signs of forced entry. No muddy footprints. No proof that anything unusual had happened at all. The rational part of my brain seized on that, clung to it like a life raft. I hadn't been sleeping well since moving in. New place. New routines. Loneliness has a way of amplifying sound, bending perception. That's what I told myself as I made coffee and stared out at the empty street. Still, I didn't turn the lights off. I called in sick to work. Lied without effort. The idea of leaving the house felt wrong, like stepping away from something unfinished. Or worse, inviting it to follow. By noon, the fear had dulled into a constant ache. Not panic anymore. Vigilance. I started noticing things I couldn't remember noticing before. The hallway felt longer than it should have been. The corners of rooms seemed darker, even in daylight. Sounds carried strangely, as if the house were hollow in places it shouldn't be. Around 2 in the afternoon, I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow. Careful. I stood at the bottom of the staircase, heart climbing into my throat with each creak. The steps were old. They complained when you put weight on them. These footsteps knew exactly where to step to make the least noise. Hello. I called. The word echoed back to me, thin and lonely. The footsteps stopped. I waited. Seconds stretched. Then, a single step. Closer. I took a step back instead, nearly tripping over myself. My pulse roared in my ears. I grabbed the nearest thing I could, a heavy flashlight from the hall closet, and held it like it might save me. "Who's there?" I said, louder this time. Silence. Then a voice, barely above a breath. "You hear it too, don't you?" The sound came from the top of the stairs. The voice was wrong. Not distorted, familiar. Too familiar. It sounded like me. Not exactly, but close enough to scrape against something deep in my chest. My mouth went dry. "Who are you?" The answer came after a pause. Thoughtful. "I live here." The lights went out. Not all at once. One by one, like someone moving through the house, flipping switches as they passed. Darkness pooled at the top of the stairs and began to slide downward. I ran. I didn't think. I didn't look back. I slammed myself into the front door, hand shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get the lock open. I burst out onto the porch, gulping cold air like I'd been underwater too long. The door slammed shut behind me. On its own. I stood there, bent over, hands on my knees, listening to my own ragged breathing. The street was still empty. Too empty. Curtains drawn. No cars. No people. I knocked on my neighbor's door. Hard. Desperate. It took a full minute before it opened a crack. Mrs. Calder, elderly, sharp-eyed, always watching from behind her curtains, peered out at me. "You all right?" she asked. I opened my mouth to answer and almost laughed. How do you explain something that refuses to make sense? "I think someone was in my house," I said instead. Her expression changed immediately. Not surprise. Recognition. She glanced past me toward my place, then back at my face. Lowered her voice. "It's been quiet for a while," she said. "What has?" She hesitated. "You moved in alone?" "Yes." Her grip tightened on the door. "That's not how it usually goes." A chill ran through me. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Calder sighed, like someone deciding whether or not to tell a child a hard truth. "People don't last long in that house by themselves," she said. "Not without company." My stomach dropped. "Company." She shook her head. "You should go stay somewhere else. At least for a few nights." "Why?" I pressed. She met my eyes. "Because it doesn't like being left alone." The words landed with awful familiarity. I didn't argue. I thanked her, voice shaking, and walked away before she could say anything else. I didn't go far, just down the block to sit on the curb where I could still see my front door. Nothing moved. Eventually, against my better judgment, I went back inside. The house was bright again. All the lights on. The stairs empty. No sign of whatever had spoken to me. I felt foolish standing there, clutching the flashlight like a child with a toy weapon. That night, I slept with my bedroom door locked. I dreamed of someone standing just on the other side, breathing quietly, waiting for me to acknowledge them. When I woke, the lock was turned. From the outside. And written on the inside of the door, carved deep into the wood where my hand rested every night, were 4 words I had never seen before. "You're never really alone." The house creaked softly, almost content. And somewhere close by something smiled. The whispering started again that night, slower this time, deliberate. Not coming from the door. Not from the windows. From inside the walls, like the house itself was breathing around me. I couldn't tell where it began or ended. It was in the closet, under the bed, behind the couch cushions, everywhere, and nowhere. I tried to ignore it. Tried to tell myself it was the same fear, twisting into hallucination. But the shadows were sharper now, heavier, pooling in corners even under full light. My own reflection in the mirror felt wrong. Eyes too dark, smile too thin. And then I saw movement. At first, it was just a flicker at the edge of my vision. A figure stepping out from behind the staircase, pausing just long enough to make my stomach seize. I swung the flashlight, hitting nothing. But the darkness recoiled as if offended. The air smelled metallic like old blood, or something worse that I couldn't name. I backed toward the kitchen. My apartment had never felt so small. The walls bent slightly, edges curving in a way that made every corner a trap. I could hear the whispering all at once now. Words overlapping, almost forming sentences. But every time I strained to understand, they twisted into new horrors. "You can't hide. It knows you. Leave, stay alone." Then it spoke clearly, right in my ear. "You can't get out." The voice was mine, or a perfect imitation. I stumbled, spinning around. The flashlight flickered and went out. Darkness consumed me entirely. A laugh followed. Not loud. Not mocking. Patient. It came from the living room. The air shimmered, a low hum vibrating through the floorboards. I ran, crashing into the walls, doors, anything to escape, but the layout wasn't right anymore. Hallways stretched. Doors led to rooms that didn't exist. Time felt wrong. Minutes stretched like hours. I screamed, but my own voice betrayed me. It echoed back distorted as if someone or something was laughing in perfect sync with me. I hit the stairs, hoping to reach the front door. But the banister stretched too long. The landing was higher than it should be. And then I saw it. A figure standing at the top of the stairs, faceless. Tall, too tall, moving with impossible grace. It raised a hand, and the lights flared for a brief moment. I could see my own body on the floor, back in my bedroom, eyes wide, staring at nothing. The figure's hand touched me through the air, a sensation like ice sliding under my skin. "You shouldn't have come back," it said. I scrambled backward, tripping over the distorted stairs. My heart threatened to burst from my chest. The walls closed in. The floor shifted beneath me. I tried to scream, but it felt like my throat had disappeared. A whisper brushed my ear. "I've been waiting." Then the lights went out. I was falling. Or floating. I couldn't tell. The figure was everywhere now. The house had become it, and it had become the house. Every familiar corner, every object I'd ever touched, was a part of it. My mind screamed for logic. For reason. But reason had no place here. I reached for the doorknob, the front door, my only hope, but it was gone. A cold weight pressed against my chest. Breath left me in ragged bursts. I looked up, and through the darkness, I saw hundreds of eyes, all mine, all watching, all knowing. It leaned close. "You're home," it whispered. And then I realized I had never been alone. Not for a single second. Home alone horror stories that will haunt you forever. The darkness didn't recede. It grew heavier, pressing into my chest, wrapping around my limbs, weighing down my thoughts. I could feel it in the walls, the floor, even the air I tried to breathe. Every sound I made echoed back in wrong tones, twisted versions of my own voice laughing at me. I stumbled into the living room. The furniture had shifted, or maybe the room itself had. The coffee table sat at a strange angle. The couch seemed longer than before, stretching into corners I didn't recognize. Shadows pooled where light should have been. My flashlight flickered violently, revealing flashes of the figure I had seen before. Tall, faceless, impossibly still. "I'm not leaving," I whispered, my own voice betraying me. "Good," the voice answered, soft and deliberate, right behind me, though the figure had not moved. "You shouldn't." The house groaned. Doors slammed shut on their own. Windows rattled. I ran, but every hallway bent, every door led me back into the rooms I thought I had escaped. I realized then, the house wasn't a place anymore. It was the entity. It had consumed the space, folded it around itself like a trap. I clawed at the front door. My hands scraped the wood. My nails broke. The doorknob spun in slow, deliberate circles as if mocking my effort. The figure moved closer, though I couldn't tell if it was stepping or if the house itself was closing in. "You're home," it whispered again. I fell to my knees, gasping, shaking uncontrollably. Every reflection, every shadow, every creak of the floorboard was proof that I had been observed, studied, and trapped from the moment I stepped inside. There was no fight left in me. My mind screamed for logic, for escape, for anything human, but the house had erased those paths. And then I felt it. The cold grip of something that wasn't flesh on my shoulder. The figure leaned close. I saw it in the reflection of the lamp. My own face, frozen in terror, staring back at me, only it wasn't me. It was me, or a version of me the house had kept. It smiled. When the first light of dawn filtered through the curtains, I was still on the floor, pressed against the wall. My limbs ached. My voice was gone. The house was silent, almost tender, as though nothing had happened. Yet the air held a quiet accusation, a weight that I could not shake. I didn't try to leave. I didn't call anyone. I didn't even try to turn on the lights. I knew, deep down, that leaving was impossible. Every door I had tried had already decided I could not pass. Every window I glanced through promised only emptiness outside. The house had won. Days or nights I could no longer tell, passed without change. Shadows lingered where they shouldn't. Objects moved subtly, signs that someone or something was always watching. I began whispering back almost instinctively, to remind myself I was still here. But the whispers had learned my voice, repeating my own words back in distorted, perfect imitation. Sometimes the faintest movement catches my eye. A shadow, too slow to be natural. A reflection that doesn't match reality. I have stopped sleeping on the bed, stopped trusting the rooms I once knew. I am home alone. And yet never truly alone. The house breathes around me. It knows my name. It knows my thoughts. I exist only because it allows me to. And in the quietest moments, when even the whispers pause, I feel it smile. Because it has claimed me entirely. A single, lingering thought remains, chilling and inevitable. You can never leave a house that already knows your name.